Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are recording.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Good evening, council. Good evening, staff and everyone. I'll now call a regular council meeting to order. Mr. Taylor, do we have any public input? Meeting is open. Statements
no more than... There's no one from the public attending.
Okay. Thank you. And any late additions or deletions for the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we do have one late item, which will go as item 19, closed session. The session is proposed to be closed under section 91, paragraph K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provisions of the municipal service that are in the preliminary stages and that, in the view of council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Any other additions or deletions? Hearing none, I would like someone to move that the March 15th, 2021 regular council meeting be agenda be adopted as amended. Councillor Howe, second. Councillor Wiebe. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. There being no delegations, no public and statutory hearings. Item 6.1, someone please move that the March 1st, 2021 regular council meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Who will move? Councillor Hopful, second. Councillor Wiebe. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried, thank you. Being no business arising from the minutes, no rise and report, we'll go to item 9, which is correspondence. Anyone from council? 9.1, require the correspondence to be removed for discussion. Councillor Howe?
Yes, thank you. Number 5, please.
Mr. Mayor, you are still muted.
Gosh, I sounded good, didn't I? Okay, hearing none. I need someone to move that the correspondence included in the information report dated March 10th, 2021 be received for information, less item 5, correspondence number 5. Who will so move? Councillor Wiebe, second. Councillor Howe. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried. No reports from committees of council and commissions. Item 11.1. We seek a resolution of support for Councillor Howe's attendance at the High Ground 2021 Civic Governance Forum. Mr. Deniger, you speak to this?
Yeah, I'll just give a very brief intro. Not a big deal, just the current policy of the district doesn't really differentiate between travel and training. It's all just lumped together in one policy. And this was back from pre-COVID era when all training had to be in person and you had to travel across the province to do it. Unfortunately, we have technology now. So we do still have to follow the policy though. It's a $105 ask, which staff have spent writing the report already. But if council is in agreement, we do have the budget well within budget to do training, and we will look as staff at amending the training and travel policy for council so that it can actually maybe build in some of these flexibilities for certain amounts under a certain dollar amount. But for right now, it is required that council authorize any and all expenditures for other members of council for training.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from council? They're hearing none. I need a resolution that Councillor Howe, Jamie Howe, attendance at the Columbia Institute High Ground 2021 Civic Governance Forum be supported. Who will move? Councillor Wiebe, second. Councillor Hopful. Any further discussion? I will call the question. Those in favor? Those against? There being none, carried. Well done. Okay, 11.2, Lillooet Community Fund Committee Member Application.
Good evening, council, staff, and members of the public who may be listening. Before you here, you have a staff report respecting the Lillooet Community Fund Committee with respect to a member application. Council may recall that we had a resignation late last year on the committee. The district has now advertised in 2 rounds for a committee member. We received 1 application, a strong application. Normally, if we receive multiple applications, we would consider those applicants in a closed session. Because we have 1 applicant and the applicant is a strong applicant, Ms. Betty Weaver. She has a history in Lillooet, working here and working with nonprofits. You will find as attachment 2 to this report her application form with some information redacted of a personal nature, such as phone number. You'll see here that she has contributed many years with CIBC in a loans and investment context, and she has extensive experience with government and nonprofit. And she has a recognition of the value of this committee to the community. So the recommendation from staff is that council support her application and appoint her to the committee, Ms. Betty Weaver. And I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from council? I see none. Thank you. I would like someone to move that Betty Weaver be appointed to the Lillooet Community Fund. Councillor Leach, second. Councillor Wheat. No further discussions. Call the question. All those in favor? Those against? Mr. Taylor, we got to do it again. I think my side froze. I'll call the question again. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 11.3, 2021 UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, Emergency Operations Centers and Training Application. Mr. Oiki.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thanks for hearing me. Just a brief discussion on this. It's our usual application to the Union of BC Municipalities funding program, and this is for emergency preparedness operations and trainings. Looking for your support in the application to be submitted, and the funds will be used this year for training, advanced EOC training, and for training staff and volunteers, and we'll be using some of that funding for upgrading of the EOC equipment as well. So as you, in the following year or previous years, it's a $25,000 maximum grant, and it's 100% paid by the UBCM. So yeah, looking for your support, please.
Thank you, Mr. Oiki. Any questions, comments from council? I hear none. Therefore, will someone please move that the application to the Union of BC Municipalities oh, sorry, I was too quick. No? Okay. Sorry again. Hey.
Sorry, it was a premature. I will make that motion.
You couldn't fool me. Okay, thanks. That the application of the Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for the Emergency Operations Centers and Training Funding be supported. Who moves? Councillor Hoffel, second. Councillor Wiebe. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. Oike.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 12, bylaws and resolutions. 12.1, connection to utility rate bylaw. I take it, Ms. LaRue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first, I just want to apologize to all of council for this error, especially because it's 3 bylaws that we have to give 3 readings and adoption to. So I apologize for all the talking you're going to have to do, Mr. Mayor. This is simply a correction to the water and sewer utility rate bylaws that council adopted at the last meeting. It was noticed when we were entering them into the system that one of the rates was formatted incorrectly. It should have had 4 decimal places. It had 0. So the rate actually shows as $0 per square foot for the shopping centers. And as you can see in the bylaws, formatted to 4 decimal places, there is actually a rate that should be charged. And I would like to say, I can't believe Councillor Hopful didn't catch this for me. So I'm happy if, to take any questions if there are any. Otherwise, staff is recommending that these 3 bylaws be introduced, read 3 times, and adopted.
Okay, thank you. Anything from, that's why I was a bit confused initially when I looked at it. I thought we did read the bylaws for the first, second, third time and just had to do the adoption, but I understand that now. So I think Councillor Hoffel was probably relaxing. Any further comments, questions, clarification from council? Thank you, Ms. LaRue. And we will go through these one at a time. Regarding the water connection regulation bylaw number 68, 1997 amendment bylaw 2021-13. 1, we need someone to move that the water connection and regulation bylaw number 68, 1997 amendment bylaw 2021-13 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. Who will move? Councillor Wiebe, second Councillor Leach. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, I need someone to move that the water connection and regulation bylaw number 68, 1997 amendment bylaw 2021-13 be adopted. Councillor Leach, second Councillor Howe. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Regarding the water connection and regulation bylaw 428, 1984 amendment bylaw 2021-14. I need someone to move that the water connection and regulation bylaw number 428, 1984 amendment bylaw 2021-14 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. Who moves? Councillor Wiebe, second Councillor Howe. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, and thank you. Will someone please move that the water connection and regulation bylaw number 428, 1984 amendment bylaw 2021-14 be adopted. Councillor Hopful, second Councillor Wiebe. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. The last one we have is the sewer connections regulation bylaw number 430, 1984 amendment bylaw 2021-15. Someone please move that the sewer connections and regulations bylaw number 430, 1984 amendment bylaw 2021-15 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. Who will move? Councillor Leach, second Councillor Howe. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried, and thank you. Someone please move that the sewer connection and regulations bylaw number 430, 1984 amendment bylaw 2021-15 be adopted. Councillor Hoffel, second Councillor Howe. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Carried, and thank you. Thank you, Ms. LaRue. Thank you, Council. Item 12.2, fees and charges bylaw Okay, I see Mr. Taylor up there. I thought, did I forget something? No. Okay. Item 12.2, fees and charges bylaw number 2021-3, Cayush Creek Campground Regulation bylaw 2021-04 and 2021 housekeeping amendment bylaw number 1, bylaw number 2021-5.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a group of bylaws that all do need to be considered together as a single unit, so that if we do have any issues with any of these bylaws, I'm going to ask that council only give the same amount of readings to the same bylaws so that we can take them all together as one holistic item. Otherwise, the whole house of cards falls apart. So I'm just going to load up my presentation here. It's just taking a moment because it's a lot of information I'm going to throw at you. And this will be probably the only time that I'm talking about anything that has this many dollar signs in it. I will usually leave the money to the CFO. But we're going to take a stab at it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today I would like to introduce to Council the proposed consolidated fees and charges bylaw number 2021-003, as well as the Cayush Creek Campground Regulations bylaw and the 2021 housekeeping amendment bylaw number 1, all of which are necessary to clean up after the fees and charges bylaw. So I will start with a full overview of the fees and charges bylaw and talk about why a bylaw like this is beneficial and how it will benefit consistent review moving forward, and a quick overview of some proposed changes. I would like to point out that this isn't what I would consider a full fee review, but rather some tweaking while we have the bylaw open, with a full review to come once all fees are incorporated and a fee review procedure and policy can be put in place. The first question is, do we need a fees and charges bylaw? The answer is nope. But not having one would be like hiding all of your bills in different rooms of your house. You know they're there, you know roughly how much each one is, but it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to forget about them that way. What are the benefits of a fees and charges bylaw? Keeping the fees together allows council, the community, and staff a broader picture of the fees imposed by the district. At the moment, it takes even staff who use these bylaws regularly some time to hunt for appropriate fees for district services. This bylaw would be a one-stop shop for anyone looking to cost out district fees, especially useful for developers looking to cost out a project. Why have a fees and charges bylaw? Aside from what I've already mentioned, comprehensive fee reviews are a 2021-2022 municipal objective. Putting in this framework now will set up that project for success. And are there any detriments to a fees and charges bylaw? From a logistics perspective, there isn't a detriment. However, service users may feel like there are new fees that hadn't been charged in the past, as staff were potentially unaware of them. So fees and charges bylaw is meant to be complementary to the regulatory bylaws. The fees bylaw should not include regulations, or the regulations should be directly attributable and conditional on the fee being addressed. This allows the regulations to be changed without having to address fees, and vice versa. The regulation bylaw need only point to the fees and charges bylaw. Each fee type is given its own schedule for further ease of reference and amendment. By way of example, here are many, but not all, of the regulation bylaws that contain fees. As you can see, it is much easier to cross-reference fees when they're all in one place, rather than scattered across the multiverse of adopted, amended, and re-amended bylaws. Staff are proposing, initially, 18 schedules for the bylaw categorized as shown. This number is not static, and schedules can be added, removed, and consolidated if required in the future. For this initial bylaw review, only schedules 1, 6, 8, and 10 are going to be populated, with additional schedules coming forward throughout the year. As each of these schedules will require cleanup or housekeeping for the bylaws that currently contain fees, staff decided it was preferable to handle the transition in smaller chunks. So in summary, reasons to have a fee and charges bylaw are easier for the public, easier for staff, easier for developers, easier for council, easier to review, easier to find, and to summarize a little bit more, it's easier for everyone. So that brings us to round 1 of fees and charges schedules. Most of these come from the current administrative fees bylaw, with the development fees coming from the development application procedure bylaw and the subdivision procedure bylaws. To start is Schedule 1, administrative fees. These fees cover administrative charges for generally services provided at front counter, such as photocopying, printing, and tax certificates. Not a lot of changes proposed here, other than suggesting to change fees for specific bylaw printing to actual printing cost. This lowers the fee for instance, this lowers the fee for printing the current zoning bylaw by $84 and increases the printing for the subdivision and development servicing bylaw by $5.75, or the actual cost of printing. In a future review, it is likely that we will do away with specific references to bylaws and just leave the printing costs standard for any time of printing, also taking into account staff time. Also, we are looking at providing land title search services for title search prints and documents, all of which are required to make any application on any piece of land. Does anyone from council have any questions on the administrative fees at this point?
Anything from council? Councillor Hoffel, yes?
Through the mayor, can I just ask, when we talk about like 25 cents per page, for the staff to locate the document online, print it out, address the envelope, the stamp, mail it, I mean, it's not a lot of time, but should we not be looking at a flat rate of, say, $25, which includes the first 25 pages and 25 cents every page thereafter? Wouldn't that be, I just think that for, if somebody wants something pulled up and copied and it's 10 pages long, that's $2.50. I mean, it's not really covering the costs.
Yeah, so this is under the, Mr. Mayor, through you, this is under just photocopying. In a future, and you're probably going to hear this a bunch today, in the future review, we're actually going to be looking at a records search fee, so that we're actually taking staff time into account. We'll probably be following the freedom of information fee structure for that, just to keep everything consistent. You also notice that further down the list here, we've got mailing of records, which is at actual cost. So we'll be charged above and beyond any photocopying fee. And quite frankly, a lot of things are just scanned and emailed at this point. There isn't a whole lot that needs to be sent out. And if it is, those costs under this schedule would be directly recoverable.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, Mr. Deniger, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. So moving on to development fees.
Sorry to interrupt. Councillor Weeb had a question.
Thank you. I'm curious as to
Councillor Weeb, have we lost you?
Appears to have frozen.
Okay, I'm going to move on then, and we'll come back to slide 10 when Councillor Weeb is back online. So moving on to development fees, which don't appear to have been reviewed since 2003. Staff are proposing, actually, Mr. Mayor, would you like me to continue, or do you want to take a short recess until Councillor Weed can get back?
I think she'll be back shortly. There she is now.
Okay, then I'll go back to slide 10 for Councillor Weed.
Sorry, let's hope this works this time. When we were talking about a building permit and then you had to pull something of title or whatever, is that included in this fee, or has that?
Thank you through the mayor. This is included. If you look at the bottom of this list under the land title office fees, title search print is the required item that needs to be submitted. And then other land title documents which are referenced on that title search print will be pulled at cost, plus $5 for staff time and printing costs.
Thank you.
Good. Anything else from council? Thank you, Mr. Taylor. You can proceed.
Thank you. So moving on to development fees, which don't appear to have been updated since 2003. Staff are proposing some more significant changes to development fees than to administrative fees, but most of those are decreased or the addition of fees for services that we have been providing. To start, the fee for an official community plan amendment is proposed to be raised by $250 from $1,000 to $1,250. As we are in the process of going through the OCP, hopefully everything should be designated properly and developers can develop in accordance with that plan rather than proposing amendments. The application fees for zoning and joint zoning OCP amendments are proposed to remain the same, and the temporary use permit application is staff are suggesting a reduction from $1,000 to $750. We are also suggesting breaking down the development permit fee structure. At the moment, it is $500 across the board to apply for development permit. However, not all DPs are $500 worth of work. Environment and hazardous conditions DP is recommended to remain the same. Watercourse or riparian development permits are recommended to drop from $500 to $200. Now, in the last week, and actually in the committee of the whole today, I found it amusing that both the mayor and Councillor Weed spoke to provincial downloading. The reason staff are actually proposing to drop this fee is because the province has significantly uploaded a lot of the work for this particular item. The $200 will cover the costs. Will cover the reduced amount of staff time required for issuance of the permit and monitoring throughout the development process. Further, form and character development permits are suggested to go from $500 to $450 unless the change is for paint only, where the color is changing in a development permit area, where staff are proposing a new fee of $100. Development variance permits are overpriced at $1,000, although this could have been largely deterrent-based due to lack of staff, which is still an issue. However, we are only supposed to set fees based on service delivery. Applying for a variance may take staff and council time, but it is a legislated right, and we shouldn't make it prohibitively expensive, allowing only the wealthy to change the rules. Not that $500 is pocket change, but it's at least twice as accessible. Staff are also proposing some more explicit fees for subdivisions, but the most this should raise any application fee from today is by about $100. Subdivision is a fairly expensive process, and if $100 is going to break the bank, then it would be good to catch that early. So I didn't pull these numbers out of thin air. Staff did a review of 4 similarly sized municipalities and proposed fees that were generally within the margin of average between these 4. The 4 communities were Village of Telqua, Hudson's Hope, Pemberton, and Roseland, all around a similar population size to Lewitt. The only outlier here is the temporary use permit. This is again down to staffing availability of the district. A temporary use permit average between the 4 communities was $575, and staff are proposing, I think $750. A TUP follows a very similar public process to a rezoning, and any less would be seeing the district take a loss on these applications. Finally, Development Services is proposing that these fees be added on an exact cost recovery basis, as the cost of each of these items can change based on complexity and situation. Are there any questions or comments on development fees?
Councillor Hoffel?
Thank you. So going back, yes, to that slide right there, I noticed that there was $100 fee for minor form and character. So a color change, painting only. So you're saying that if a commercial property wants to paint and change the color from the existing scheme that we have as a bylaw, that it would cost them $100 to do that?
Well, it would be any change at all. So the last one that we had was the flower shop on Main Street. Had a development permit to paint it green. They paid $500 for that development permit. It does still need to come before council, because any form and character change in a development permit area, especially a commercial development permit area, does require that process as set out in the official community plan. But staff acknowledged that for painting, the amount of staff review does not justify a $500 fee. $100 is much more realistic for the report and staff time to bring it to council.
But there was no fee, there was no charge for that minor form and character. There was a zero current fee. 2016 was zero.
What happened there? So what the difference was that it was broken down actually into two different fees. There was structural fees and non-structural fees. So it actually didn't really speak very well to form and character applications, because technically any form and character development permit would have been free. So yes, by the technicality of it, it would have been $0, but in the actual bylaw that didn't speak to it too clearly, it was $500.
Okay, and sorry, so there is a staff impact if somebody wants to make a color change, if they want to paint?
Yes. Yeah, it is an application to change the color of anything downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from council? Okay, carry on, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you. And I will, of course, be open to questions at the end if you want to think about it a bit. So campground fees are proposing modest raises, as they haven't been changed in 5 years, with feedback from the campground administrator and the manager of recreation. Staff have proposed the following. For a full site hookup, to raise the fee by $10. For a non-service site, a raise by $5. For field use, a raise of $50 for the first 8 hours, and the remaining subsequent hours at $5 per hour, and no increase to the damage deposit. Further, no increase to a shower use on the site. The Sandy Dump is proposed with a raise of increase of $5. With a year-round use for recreational vehicles up by $10 to $50, and no increase proposed for the water fill up at the campground. River access is being proposed for single-use boat launch at $10, monthly use at $40, and annual use at $200. I do apologize, in your report, I believe it says $100. That was just a typo. For parking, for vehicle parking, it is suggested at $5 a day, $20 a month, and $100 a year, and similarly for trailer parking with the same numbers. Staff are also requesting that we abandon both group rate fees. Non-service site electrical fees is that's something that just hasn't been used, and monthly rates, as campgrounds are meant to be temporary use for the traveling public. Once you start to get into monthly rentals, you fall under the BC Tenancy Act. So the intent of the campground is to be used for that temporary dwelling and is not a replacement for hotels and motels. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments from council?
I've got one, Mayor Bussey. I don't know if you can see me or not.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, so under the river access and parking for council on our in our agenda package on page 101, it says parked vehicles associated with users of the boat launch are subject to parking fees prescribed in section 3.0 of this schedule. So if somebody, for example, there's a business and they have a vehicle and a boat trailer, when they take out that parking pass, is it take out the parking pass for a year, sorry, or for the season, whatever it is that like, is it only for that one particular vehicle? So is it going to be like registration with their like license plate number, or can one day they use the green truck and the next day they use the silver truck or whatever on the same pass? Like, how are we going to monitor that?
So quite honestly, the logistics of this haven't been worked out yet. That will be done with the manager of recreation and when we determine how the campground is being managed next year. So we will develop that procedure around these fees to make sure that it is fair. These numbers for the boat launching specifically were put together in consultation with some of the actual people who would be using it. So I imagine that we would also speak to them about the best way to issue a pass, whether it's vehicle specific or user specific.
And just to follow up on there, would this be an appropriate time for us to maybe also include in this that maybe there be a company pass at a higher fee for their fleet, because typically these companies will have their vehicles insured on a fleet insurance. So if they had the fleet documentation, could they get a pass for their whole thing? And then we wouldn't have to, we could probably skip that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. That's a bit more of a complicated question that I hadn't considered here. So, I mean, if that's something that council would like to see, we can absolutely bring that forward in a future amendment. What my recommendation would be is maybe to see how this first year goes and then come back and reassess.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leach. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, Mr. Taylor.
Okay, thank you. So there are no changes to filming location fees. This was simply a one-to-one swap out of the administrative fees bylaw into this, just so I could delete that section. We will review them during the full fees review to compare to other municipalities and see if these are reasonable or if there are better practices. Any questions on Schedule 10? Okay, thank you. So the next steps are to work with the department heads to identify fees and additional schedules. Council will be receiving amending bylaws to add these fees to the new fees and charges bylaw and rescind them from other bylaws. The next set of fees will likely be building fees. The question of establishing metered water will need to be addressed prior to inclusion of the water rates, and is anticipated that all fees will be incorporated into the fees and charges bylaw by the end of the year 2022. So now there are two other bylaws in this report. This one is the Cayush Creek Campground Regulations bylaw. They are currently in the administrative fees bylaw as a schedule, which, if you will remember, I said thou shalt not do that all the way back on schedule on slide 4. So the regulations still have to go somewhere, so staff undertook to remove the regulations from the administrative fees bylaw and give them their own bylaw. Some minor changes to regulations are being proposed, but they are mostly operational. These include reservation dates is currently the first Monday of March of each year, and the proposed change is to fix the date at March 15th. Your staff report, I do believe, says first Monday of the year. That should read March. Also, quiet hours are proposed to be extended by 1 hour in the morning from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. based on feedback and consultation with the campground administrator. 2021 Housekeeping Amendment Bylaw Number 1, Bylaw Number 2021-005. This mouthful of a bylaw is a practice I like to employ to keep my newer bylaws tidy. You often see bylaws that have very long prefaces, repealing a series of other bylaws in order to enact a new one. This is not necessary and could have been done, this bylaw is not necessary and could have been done in the fees and charges bylaw, but my OCD had a problem with it. So instead of making the fees and charges bylaw messy, the housekeeping bylaw will take care of the repeals and changes that are not integrated into the fees and charges bylaw. These changes are in the administrative fees bylaw 2016 number 446 by deleting sections 4 through 7, which point to the appended schedules. Replace Schedule A in Administrative Bylaw 446 with Schedule A of the Housekeeping Bylaw. This is because I haven't yet taken out all of the fees spoken to in that bylaw, and we do need to keep those fees somewhere for the time being. Also deleting Schedules B, C, D, and E, which have been incorporated into the schedules before you this evening. Further, repeal Administrative Fees Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2018 number 455. Those are the campground regulations in Schedule 7, Schedule E. Repealing the Development Application Fee Bylaw 2016 number 446. In the Development Application Procedure Bylaw 195/2003, defining application fees is being set in the fees and charges bylaw. Deleting section 3, which points to the appended schedules to the bylaw, and deleting schedules A through D, which contain application fees and permit templates. It's no longer good practice to entrench permits or application form templates in bylaws, as any administrative change would require a bylaw amendment. And finally, the Subdivision Procedures and Fees Bylaw number 60, 1997. Amend section 4A to point to the fees and charges bylaw and delete Schedule A, subdivision application fees. And mercifully, that's it for that presentation, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Very well done. Any questions, comments from council? Councillor Leach?
Thank you for your presentation. There is just a typo on the last bit of the subdivision procedures and fees bylaw number 60, 1997. It does not read fees.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Good. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Wiebe, are you on? Councillor Wiebe, are you there? I don't see any filming fees
Yes,
for.
I am here.
Okay, good. I don't see any filming fees in case they want to use the mayor or a councillor in their documentary and the like.
I'm not going to respond to that, Mr. Mayor.
Let's not encourage it.
We have to make every bit of revenue that we can. Okay, just checking. Councillor Wiebe, any questions, comments? Thank you. Okay. Well done, Mr. Taylor. We'll go through this now. So I need someone to move. This is fees and charges bylaw. That fees and charges bylaw number 2021-3 be read a first and second time. Who will move? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Hoppel. Any further discussion? I'll call a question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Need someone to move that the fees and charges bylaw number 2021-3 be read a third time. Councillor Howe, second Councillor Leach. Further discussion? I'll call a question. All those in favor? Thank you and carried. We'll move to the Cayush Creek Campground Regulations bylaw. Is someone to move that the Cayush Creek Campground Regulation bylaw number 2021-4 be read a first and second time? Councillor Howe, second Councillor Leach. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Please move that Cayuse Creek Campground Regulation Bylaw number 2021-4 be read a third time. Councillor Weeb, second Councillor Howe. Further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Carried, thank you. And finally, 2021 Housekeeping Amendment Bylaw number 1. Need someone please move that 2021 Housekeeping Amendment Bylaw number 1, Bylaw number 2021-5 be read a first and second time. Councillor Leach, second Councillor Weeb. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. And need someone to move that 2021 Housekeeping Amendment Bylaw number 1, Bylaw number 2021-5 be read a third time. Councillor Weeb, second Councillor Leach. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Great. Carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. And thank you, Council. There being no notice of motion, we'll move to report from the Mayor. On March the 4th, I attended the Mayor's Vaccine Roundtable with Interior Health by Zoom. On March 11th, again, attended the Mayor's Vaccine Roundtable with Interior Health by Zoom. All that information derived, obviously, was Interior Health updating schedules with regard to vaccinations, and those were rolled out, I think, on our website and Facebook by staff. On March 11th, reviewed capital and service level budget reviews with a committee of the whole by teams. And March 12th, I had a Zoom meeting with Indigenous Court for the Lillooet and Lillooet Tribal Council area. That's it for me. Councillor Huffel.
Thank you. March 1st, I attended the regular council meeting. March 11th, the financial committee of the whole meeting. On March 11th, I also attended the NEDIC meeting, and we are still working on our spreadsheet. Councillor Weeb and I have met a couple of times just to continue our work on the spreadsheet for the Lillooet area, and I think we're making good progress, and I'll let her tell you about it in her roundtable. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Howe?
Yes, thank you. Okay, on Wednesday, March 10th, I was present in the Silga Speaker Series. And this particular speaker series addressed where we are with the COVID pandemic currently, efforts being made, as well as how municipalities can help Interior Health combat the opioid crisis. What would you call it? The person spearheading, so to speak, this particular series was our district councillor, Councillor Weeb, and she did a fantastic job. She was, not that I'm surprised, I knew she would do a great job, but she did a really good job. Yeah, it was seamless, and I think she had some of us in stitches, and it just seemed very natural for her. So way to go, Councillor Weeb. Some of the data that was covered was in the how to combat the opioid crisis was walkable spaces in our community plans. So ensuring that we're creating that, as well as anti-stigma toolkits created for the municipalities. And I do believe they're going to be sending those out to us fairly shortly here. I've also asked for studies showing effectiveness of past and ongoing efforts combating the opioid crisis to accompany the anti-stigma kits. And so I'm hoping those will come fairly shortly in the near future too. And there was a whole slew of information provided. So if anybody wants to know more, please let me know. and I can send that off to you guys, or I could just, email a debrief on all the notes taken. And then on Wednesday, March 11th, I was present at the council budget meeting, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillor Leach, please.
Hello. March 1st, we had our regular council meeting, and March 11th, I also attended the financial meeting via Teams as well. A couple of updates for you. So SWIMS has their new fundraising total for I think they're in week 5, is now $66,041.33. So way to go, SWIMS. Also, just to let the community know, if you're not on the Friends of SWIMS newsletter or haven't been in contact with any of the group, the pool pass prices are going to be increased April 1st. So if you're planning on getting your pool pass, do so before then, help them out. And then also, I just wanted to thank a member of the public, Olivia Skagos. She wrote this amazing article or letter to the editor in our local paper last week about the municipal childcare plan and why we need one, in her opinion, and encouraging all parents to go in and do the survey. I think it's through Survey Monkey, which it's posted on all of our district platforms and websites. It was just really well written, and speaking from one mom to another, but also a working parent, it just hit all of the points. So thank you, and I have asked Ms. G to add it to our council reading list, so it will come across your emails next week, I believe, if you haven't already read it. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Councillor Leach, and well done, SWIMS. Councillor Wiebe.
Well, my goodness, I could be here all night. On March 2nd, I attended a Gold Country meeting. It was closed, dealing with HR issues. On March 3rd, I attended the SILGA speaker series, and it included Tella Shaw, and it was basically about broadband. Councillor Howe was signed up for that as well, but they changed the format to I don't even know what it was called. That she had difficulties getting in. I had difficulties getting in. So I don't think it was anything that we all haven't heard about broadband, how it's coming, how it's this, how it's that. Once you're on the list, you stay on the list. And I also attended another closed meeting of Gold Country that same afternoon. On March 4th, we had a phone Lillooet Board and BMX Association meeting just to get our priorities straight, who was doing what. And if anybody's been down there, the park's just about finished. On March 5th, I attended another closed Gold Country meeting. Hopefully everything's rectified now and we could just move on from there. And as Councillor Howe said, on the 10th, I was in Kamloops hosting the speaker series. I briefly remember what it was about, but she did do a good commentary there, and thank you very much for the kind words. I had a great time. Didn't realize that I needed it as much as they did, I think. It was like I was a different personality once I got there. On the 11th, I attended the Zoom NEDIC meeting along with Councillor Hopfull. And I think we have completed that spreadsheet, or else we'll be getting a new spreadsheet to add to or subtract from. I also attended the council budget meeting that evening. On March 12th, I attended a SILGA meeting in order to decide how we're moving forward on this AGM and our speaker series and everything else that's going on. So next year, I don't know if I should go into this year or next year. I don't know which one. Anyway, elections. The table officers are in, they're acclaimed for Silga. The elections will probably be April 19th to the 23rd. Our district office CAO will be getting a letter so he can register all of council for the AGM and the voting series. Next year, hopefully we can have our Silga convention in person, and it will go from April 26th to the 29th. And seeing as we are coming through this pandemic, we're thinking we're going to do a Roaring 20s theme. And so everybody that's going better be prepared to dress up for a few days. Should be lots of fun. What else have I done? I had another mini meeting for the Skateboard Park Association, and on the 14th, Councillor Hopful and I completed our NEDIC duties and picked the 3 priorities and got that emailed off to the SLRD. And now we'll wait to our next meeting to see what our next steps are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weed. Yes, Councillor Leach, you have a question.
I have a question for Councillor Weeb. The event that you hosted, you mentioned that there's a possible YouTube stream of it somewhere, or is going to be?
Yes, there is. I believe we got a link today along with our civic info information. I haven't tried it yet, so I'll try it and then I'll send the link to everybody if you would like, and then you can go from there.
Are you going to share it with the public so they can watch as well?
Sure. Maybe the district office can put it on the website. How is that?
Well, thank you, Councillor Leach and Councillor Weeb. My interest should mainly rely on whether or not the district is going to get a filming fee. And maybe that's something you can take up with Mr. Taylor later on. If you're going to have yourself filmed and sent all around the country, we need a little piece of the action. Okay. I've just been told to be quiet. Okay. Thank you, councils. Mr. Deniger, CAO report.
I'm actually going to save my time for later in the meeting when we go into closed.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to item 17.1, which is item 5, which is a request for letters of support laid off hotel and tourism industry workers. Councillor Howe, you wish to speak to this?
Yes, please, and thank you. When I read this, I recognize the need, but I did have questions. One of my big questions is where the mention is that the pandemic means that recall rights require extension, and it was the word rights that had me a bit confused. So if it is indeed a violation of rights in all sense, then this is something worthy of council review. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to what is this called now? I'm going to put forth a notice of motion to bring this back to the table at the next meeting, which will allow me the time to contact council that put this forward, and just learn a little bit more about how this came to be. And then I can bring that to the table for further discussion later.
Okay, then I suggest then that you move that council or we receive the correspondence and approve it as accepted. Will you so move?
I do.
So that's the New West correspondence request for letters of support relayed off hotel and tourism industry workers. We are including that for information. Who seconds? Oh, Mr. Taylor, yes, go ahead.
Sorry, just before council votes, could you and Councillor Howe please turn your cameras back on?
Looks,
My camera's on. Can you not see me?
mine is too, but let me try it again.
Okay, I've just retried.
Same with
No
mine.
worries. If both of you could just indicate aye or nay when the vote is called. Mr. Mayor, you are back.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Taylor. Okay, so it's moved by Councillor Howe that we receive the New Westminster correspondence regarding letter of support for information. Who seconds? Councillor Wiebe. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Hoppel, all those against? And one against. Okay, it's carried. Okay, item 18, the meeting is open to questions from the media and public. Mr. Taylor, do we have any questions?
There is one member of the public in attendance. I'll invite them to unmute their microphone and turn on the webcam if they have a question. Mr. Mayor, I think we're good to proceed.
Thank you. Therefore, we'll move to item 19. And that the regular council meeting of March 15, 2021 be closed to the public pursuant to the Community Charter Provisions, Section 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are at preliminary stages and that in the view of the council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public. Who will move?
Aye.
Councillor Howe moves, second Councillor Leach. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that's carried. Therefore, we will adjourn the meeting. I need someone to move that the March 15th, 2021 regular council meeting be adjourned. Who will move? Councillor Wiebe, second Councillor Leach. Call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, council staff and public, and we will wait for Mr. Taylor to inform us that the meeting is now closed.